Will you pray for me? Lord, may the words of my lips and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, because you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. It was a great big house. It was a grand, rambling affair that she locked herself up in. The gardens had once been the envy of all the neighbors. They were extensive and beautifully and diversely planted. There were trees from all over the world growing in those gardens, but it was all running wild by the time she locked herself up there. She had lived her whole life in that place, and it used to be so beautiful. She lived there with her stern father and her distant mother. And one day, that mother got sick, became bedridden. And so this young woman found herself taking care of her round the clock, tending to her needs, running back and forth, checking on her, giving her medicine, changing her bed day after day, night after night. And the world saw less and less of her. They say that once upon a time, when people walked up on the porch and knocked on the door, she would open it and talk to people. But by the end, she would talk to them through a closed door. They would stand on the porch and picture her there with her hands on either side of her face, murmuring to them through the keyhole. The children of the town whispered about the strange woman locked there that they would sometimes see peering out through the curtains of an upstairs window. By the time her mother died, she wasn't even willing to come out of her room for the funeral. They say that she cracked the door to her bedroom at the top of the stairs and listened to the funeral going on in the entrance hall below, and no one ever saw her. And certainly no one ever knew what she was doing in her room all that time, for all those years. This strange Victorian woman locked in her garret. No one knew how she was spending her time, what she was applying herself to, but there were rumors. Oh, yes, there were rumors. But they were not sure until she died. And her sister went into that room and found there a locked trunk. And when she pried that trunk open, they say her eyes grew wide and her hand flew to her mouth, for then she saw what her sister had been doing all those years. And what she found there was not the kind of thing that could be kept a family secret for long. What she discovered there could not be kept silent. What she found there would be known by the world, whether she willed it or not. And so in 1890, the world found out just what she had been up to, when into the world's hands a little book landed called Poems by Emily Dickinson. God comes to Abram and says, I will make of you a great nation. I will make your name so great that the world will know it. I will make of you such a blessing that even the peoples around you will taste the blessings that I have given to you. I will fill you up until you overflow, and the world praises my name because what I have done in you has made their lives better. And what you need to know about this story that we read in Genesis today, that you heard in Genesis today, is that it wasn't written right after the time of Abraham. It was written generations and generations later, when Israel, the nation that he founded, was in fact a global superpower, at least in their little part of the globe, had in fact become a blessing to the nations. The promises had already been fulfilled by the time this story was written down. You have to understand that it was written in hindsight, and there's so much that becomes clear in hindsight. It would be as if you were to sit down and write a history of the Pilgrims and Puritans and claim that God had come to them and said, leave your homeland and come to a new land, and there I will make of you a great nation. Here you sit in the middle of such a great nation. It would be as if you sat down and told the story in that way, which isn't to say that it didn't happen that way to Abraham, you understand, just that so much becomes clear when you look back over the years. Like what Emily Dickinson had been doing in there for all that time. Today is Stewardship Sunday, the time when we spend a day, hopefully you've been spending some weeks now, considering blessings, considering gifts and talents and graces that you have received. And so on Stewardship Sunday, I cannot help but wonder about Emily Dickinson and what she thought she was doing all that time, writing down all those poems that she thought no one would ever see. Certainly some of her poems, 12 to be precise, were published during her lifetime, but they were all published anonymously. And certainly there were editors that knew what she was up to, but most people had no idea. They just looked up at that window in that old house and wondered. But her blessing, it did overflow that garret room eventually, did it not? It did come pouring out the windows of that house into the world and change so much. Change American letters, to be sure, but change the lives of young girls throughout this nation and beyond who saw a voice that they could listen to, a voice that they could speak with, and not just young girls. Generations upon generations of readers and reciters, studiers and listeners. Those blessings flowed out from that house and overwhelmed the world. But I cannot help but wonder if she wouldn't rather have been there to see it happen. You could argue, well, it doesn't really matter. As long as the poems got out there, as long as the beauty got out there, as long as all that strange punctuation and funny capitalization and all that slant rhyme made it into the world, what difference does it make if it happened before or after she died? You could argue that. You could argue it doesn't matter if Abraham ever saw the blessings that God promised him come true. And you would have a point. But I just have to wonder, wouldn't he rather have watched it happen? Don't you think Emily Dickinson would have been happier to know what she had done, to see the effect that she had on the world? Maybe not. Maybe she had good reasons for secreting herself upstairs. Agoraphobia, some say, some other mental illness. Others claim the power that men had over women's lives at the time. Maybe there were good reasons that she kept all those blessings in that little upstairs room. I don't know, but I just have to wonder if she wouldn't have rather seen her work in generation upon generation of textbooks, to see all those seventh graders with their heads bent over a narrow fellow in the grass, and wondering when there's been a death in the opposite house. All those church people reciting to each other, "This world is not conclusion, a sequel stands beyond." Wouldn't she rather have seen that? I don't know. But on Stewardship Sunday, I just can't help but wonder. Wouldn't you rather see what your blessings can do? You could argue that whatever it is that you have, whether it's money or talent, whether it's a beautiful voice or a bold new idea, you could argue that it doesn't matter if it comes out in your lifetime or generations later. You could lock it all up in a trunk in your bedroom for your sister to find after you die. You could do that. And whatever that blessing is, it will help the world after your death, I am sure. But wouldn't you rather set it free now? Wouldn't you rather see what it can do now? Wouldn't you rather invest it in a place like Plymouth or a place like the Rescue Mission or a place like Vera House? Wouldn't you rather pour it out now, open the doors and open the windows and walk down the stairs with it trailing behind you out into the world? Wouldn't you rather support the Worker Justice Center housed right up behind that window? Wouldn't you rather support this choir making music? Wouldn't you rather support all those people who week after week give out food in our food pantry? Wouldn't you rather see those blessings go to work now while you're still alive? Here's what God says to Abraham and to Emily Dickinson and to you. I will make your name great. I will make you a power for the ages. I will fill you so full of blessings that everyone around you will be blessed just by being near you. Don't you want to see it happen? Say amen.